There's something strange about driving to work while the rest of the world is settling in for dinner. The streetlights flicker to life, porch bulbs hum softly, and behind those glowing windows, families eat together. A kid does homework at the table. Someone watches a sitcom rerun with their feet up. Someone else kisses their wife goodnight. I used to do that last one every evening at 6:45 sharp. Clara would walk me to the door in her soft robe, her hair still wet from a shower, skin warm from the heat of the stove. She always kissed me. Every night. Not once did she forget. That little ritual carried us through 6 years of marriage. I remember her kissing me one night, just after her father's funeral. Grief in her eyes, but still, that kiss. I carried it like armor on the worst nights. But lately, her lips had gone colder than the November wind I walked into every shift. It started small, like most cracks do. You don't notice it right away. Just a feeling. She stopped asking me what I wanted for dinner the next night. We used to plan meals like they were tiny holidays. Then came the "I'm just tired" nights. The phone flipped face down on the counter. The longer showers. Less laughter. I remember telling myself it was stress. Work had been rough for both of us. I was doing double shifts because 2 of our ER nurses were out sick. Clara had been on edge about something at the clinic. We were both exhausted. I blamed it on that. You do that when you love someone. You fill in the blanks for them. But I kept noticing more. Her smile looked forced. Her scent changed, different perfume, one she never used before. She stopped wearing her ring around the house. Still, I held on. You don't just throw away 6 years because something feels off. Not if you're built the way I am. I work at a level 1 trauma center, fast-paced, high-stakes. The kind of place where you see the worst of humanity and the best of it sometimes in the same hour. I've held people's hands as they took their last breath and high-fived others when they walked out after being told they might never walk again. I can handle chaos. But I wasn't prepared for the kind that snuck into my home. I wasn't trained for this. The night I started to truly question things, Clara had just come back from a late dinner with a friend from work. She was all nerves when she walked in. Said it was some coworker named Rachel she hadn't seen in years. Talked too fast, laughed too hard. That kind of cover-up energy that makes you tilt your head like, really? She went straight to the shower. I stood in the kitchen and stared at the takeout bag she left on the counter. Thai food. For one. There were 2 sets of chopsticks inside though. That's when I decided I needed to know, not guess. 2 days later I bought a small camera. One of those motion-activated pin-sized things. It took me all of 5 minutes to set it up in the bedroom hidden in the corner behind a row of books on her side table. I told myself I was crazy. Paranoid. But my gut? My gut was screaming. 2 weeks went by. Nothing. Until that one shift. The one that changed everything. It was a Friday. I remember because it was supposed to be my last overnight for the week. We were short and I volunteered for the graveyard shift, figuring Clara wouldn't mind. She hadn't seemed too eager for company lately anyway. But that night, my supervisor pulled me aside an hour into the shift. Some emergency budget meeting had come down from corporate. They decided to send a few of us home early, unpaid. I wasn't happy about it, but I also didn't argue. I just packed up and left. I should have gone for a walk. Got coffee. Sat in the car. But I didn't. I drove straight home, thinking I might surprise Clara. Maybe catch her watching some crime doc, wrapped in a blanket with wine in her hand. Maybe we'd talk. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe things would feel normal. Instead, I walked into the sound of laughter. A man's laughter. Coming from upstairs. I didn't charge up there like some jealous man out of a movie. No. I sat on the couch. Quiet. Cold. Collected. Like I'd been trained to do when facing trauma. I waited. 10 minutes passed before I heard footsteps on the stairs. Then Clara appeared. Hair tousled. Face flushed. The kind of glow that doesn't come from a sheet mask or a hot bath. She stopped when she saw me like someone had cut the power to her nerves. Eyes wide. Frozen. "Lucas," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Hey," I replied, like I hadn't just heard a stranger laugh in our bedroom. She didn't move. I nodded toward the ceiling. "Who's up there?" She hesitated. Swallowed. "No one." The lie was so soft it almost sounded like a breath. Now here's the thing. That moment? That single breath of a lie? That was the moment my marriage died. But I didn't yell. Didn't scream. I just stood up, pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped the file. The video started playing. It wasn't grainy. It wasn't unclear. It was Clara in our bed with Josh, the neighbor, the guy who once borrowed my snowblower and never returned it. I should have known then he was a taker. The two of them were laughing, tangled in my sheets. acting like they owned the place. I didn't say a word. Just walked to the kitchen, cast the video to the TV, and let it loop while I packed my things. Clara didn't follow me. She just sat on the stairs, knees to her chest, watching the screen like it was some horror movie she couldn't look away from. I left a note beside the coffee maker. The house is yours. So is the guilt. Good luck sleeping in that bed. And then I left. The first night after you leave, it's quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Not the kind that helps you sleep. It's the kind of quiet that hums in your ears like a warning. Like your whole body knows something permanent just happened. I drove for about an hour with no destination in mind. I don't know why, but I ended up in the parking lot of the all-night diner off Highway 6. The one where Clara and I used to go after movies back when we were still new. Still curious about each other. Funny thing is, I wasn't even hungry. I just sat there with the engine running, watching the steam rise from the asphalt, replaying everything in my head like I was watching someone else's life. I looked down at my hand, and for the first time in over 6 years it felt heavier, even without the ring. I didn't take it off right away. Not out of denial, just out of habit. You wear something that long, it becomes part of you. It wasn't until I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, face hollow, jaw tight, that I slipped it off and dropped it in the glove box. It made the softest little clink. But man, it felt like a bomb went off. I checked into a motel that didn't ask questions. The kind with vending machines older than your average teenager and pillows that smell like old air. But I didn't need luxury, I needed space. I needed distance from the bed that had been turned into something else. Place I couldn't unknow. I turned off my phone, sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the TV without turning it on. Funny how a man can work 12-hour shifts under pressure, cracked ribs in one room, cardiac arrest in another, and still come home to cook dinner and rub his wife's shoulders. And now that same man can barely move his legs. It wasn't sadness. Not really. It was weight. The weight of realizing that you weren't crazy. That all the doubts, all the gut feelings, they were right. And the woman you trusted more than anyone was someone else now. The next morning I woke up early. Old habit. My body still thinks it's on call, even when no one's paging me. I found a diner nearby, ordered black coffee and eggs over easy, and sat by the window while the sun came up. The world didn't look any different. The sky still lit up the same. People still walked their dogs. Birds still argued over crusts in the parking lot. But everything inside me had shifted. The waitress was kind. Asked if I wanted anything else. I told her no. Just time. By noon, I had made 3 decisions. I wasn't going to stay in that motel more than a couple nights. I needed to tell someone. Not for pity, just so it wasn't all in my head. I was going to keep living, even if it meant starting from scratch. That third one. That was the hardest. I drove to my brother's place a couple towns over. He and I hadn't talked much lately. Not for any bad reason, just life being loud. When I showed up at his door, duffel bag in hand, he didn't ask a single question. Just opened the door and said, "Guest room's clean. Beer's cold." That's how you know someone loves you. We sat on the back porch for a while, neither of us saying much. Just 2 brothers watching the wind stir the trees like it always does, even when your life's in pieces. Eventually, I told him. I didn't cry. He didn't interrupt. He just sat there, jaw clenched, eyes low, until I finished. "Want me to go knock on that guy's door?" he asked finally. I shook my head. Nah. I already said everything I needed to without saying a word. He looked at me then, and for the first time in a while I felt something close to solid. "You're a better man than me," he said. "I don't know about that," I replied. I just didn't see the point in yelling. She already knew. That night he grilled burgers. His wife made sweet tea. I sat at the table with their kids and laughed for the first time in days. Felt like life wasn't over. It just changed shape. Later, I checked my phone for the first time. Missed calls. Messages. All from Clara. Some short. Some long. All unread. I didn't open them. I just deleted them one by one. Not out of anger, but because I knew no text could fix what had been broken. She made her choice. Now I was making mine. I stayed with my brother for a few days. Got some sleep. Went for runs. Ate actual meals. Slowly started to feel like a man again, not just the leftover shell of one. I called the hospital, took the week off. Told them I'd be back soon, but I needed time. They understood. That's the thing about working in a place where life and death are daily visitors. People get it when you say you need to breathe. And on the 5th day, I got my own place. Small apartment near the river. Bare walls. Cheap rent. But it was mine. No ghosts. No echoes of laughter that wasn't mine. Just 4 walls, a key, and a chance to rebuild. I stood in the middle of that empty living room and took a deep breath. I wasn't starting over. I was starting again. There's a difference. I waited 5 more days before listening to a single message. Not because I thought they'd change anything. I knew Clara's voice wouldn't rewind time. But I needed to hear it. Not for hope. For closure. It was a Sunday morning. The kind of morning where the world feels slower than usual. Church bells in the distance, birds making deals in the trees, and me sitting on the floor of a mostly empty apartment with a mug of burnt coffee and the weight of a phone full of unplayed apologies. I picked one. It was the first voicemail she left. Lucas, I don't know what to say. I didn't expect you home that early. I never meant for you to find out that way. I know how it looked, how it was. I made a mistake. A terrible one. Please call me. Please. Just let me explain. Click. I almost laughed. Explain? There's nothing that needs explaining when the evidence plays itself in high definition on your kitchen TV. I listened to a few more. Each one a different shade of guilt. One tearful. One angry. One that sounded like she'd had a glass too many. I don't even like Josh like that. It was stupid. It didn't mean anything. That one hit differently. Didn't mean anything? She gave our bed away to a man who borrows tools and forgets to give them back. A man I've waved to while mowing the lawn. The same guy who asked me for relationship advice once and I gave it, thinking we were just 2 husbands trying to do right by the women we loved. Didn't mean anything. That's the part that burns the most. I didn't respond. Not once. Didn't block her either. I wanted her words to pile up like leaves in autumn, a mess she'd eventually have to rake through on her own. One night, I bumped into Josh at the gas station. I was filling up. He pulled in behind me, stepped out like he'd been rehearsing the moment. Lucas, he said, half a nod. I turned. Stared. Didn't say a word. He opened his mouth again. Look, man, I raised a hand. Don't. He froze. You're not going to say anything I haven't already heard. And nothing you say is going to make you less of a coward. He blinked, looked down at the ground. I trusted you, I added. Not like a brother, sure. But like a neighbor. Like a man who'd walk his dog past my house and wave to my wife without thinking about what she looked like without her robe on. He had the decency to flinch at that. Just get your gas, Josh. And the next time you see me, keep walking. I left him standing there, pump in hand, no words left to borrow. There's a strange kind of power in silence. People always think revenge is loud, shouting matches, smashed plates, keying someone's car. But sometimes the deepest cut is not giving someone your energy anymore. Not reacting. Not even caring if they feel guilty. I wasn't interested in revenge. I was interested in peace. Work welcomed me back like I'd never left. My coworkers didn't ask too many questions. Just a few raised brows, a couple of quiet nods. In a hospital, you learn not to poke too deep unless someone offers it. People carry all kinds of invisible wounds. Mine was just fresh enough to still sting. It helped being back in motion. There's comfort in having a place where the problems aren't yours. A place where someone's survival depends more on your hands than your heart. In those halls, I didn't feel like the guy whose wife broke him. I felt like me again. But nights were still long. Loneliness hits hardest around 10:30 p.m. That was our time. Netflix and takeout. Her head on my chest. The way she used to hum when she was relaxed. I'd gotten so used to that rhythm it felt like missing a limb. So I started walking. Miles and miles through the city. Past lit windows and laughing couples. Through parks where swings creaked in the wind. My feet didn't care where they went. They just knew they couldn't stay still. Some nights I'd end up by the river. Watch the water move without asking why. That's something I envied about rivers. They don't dwell, they just go. Then came the letter. No envelope. Just folded paper slipped under my apartment door. It wasn't typed. It wasn't clean. It was Clara's handwriting, shaky, uneven, like her heart was trying to write while her conscience wrestled with the pen. Lucas, I know I've said too much already and not nearly enough. But I had to try once more. I keep thinking about how I used to know your walk. Your laugh. The way you'd hum in the morning when you didn't know I was listening. You were the best thing in my life. And I threw it away. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect a reply. I just needed you to know that I remember the good things. I remember us. I remember the man who loved me more than I ever deserved. And I'm sorry. I hope you find peace. Even if it's not with me. Clara. I read it twice. Then I folded it back up and slid it into the back of my desk drawer. Not to keep it. Not for nostalgia. Just so I'd remember the truth, people aren't always who they promised they'd be. But that doesn't mean you have to stop being who you are. You don't notice the exact moment your heart starts to come back online. It's not dramatic. There's no music swell or epiphany in the mirror. Sometimes it's just a joke at the nurse's station. A dumb one. We'd been having a rough shift, 2 car accidents, a bad fall, and a guy who came in convinced he had a spider nesting in his ear canal. Spoiler, it was just a rogue popcorn kernel. Don't ask. Around 4 a.m., one of the new nurses, Sam, the kind of kid who still looked like he needed permission to stay up past midnight, muttered under his breath, "You ever feel like this whole job is just adult babysitting with IVs?" And I laughed. Like, really laughed. The kind of laugh that shakes your shoulders and makes your ribs hurt a little. Everyone looked at me like I'd grown a second head. I hadn't laughed like that in weeks. I had forgotten what my own voice sounded like when it wasn't weighed down. That laugh stayed with me. Not because it was clever, it wasn't. But because it reminded me that I still had it in me. Joy. Even if it was just a flicker. It was there. A few days later, I stopped by a hardware store on my day off. My brother had roped me into helping him fix a fence post. Said it was leaning like his last attempt at a diet, which I figured was fair since the post and the man both had a knack for collapsing under pressure. As I stood in the aisle comparing screws, yes, there are too many kinds, I heard a voice behind me. Lucas? I turned. It was Dana. We hadn't seen each other in years. She was one of Clara's old friends. The kind who showed up at birthdays, brought too much wine, and gave me grief in that playful, "I know you're a good guy, but I still don't trust you yet" way. She and Clara had grown distant the last couple years for reasons I didn't know at the time. Now I could guess. Her smile was warm but cautious. Like she wasn't sure where we stood. "Hey, Dana," I said. "Been a while." She nodded. "Heard things." Of course she had. Small town. Big mouths. "I'm all right," I said. "Better now anyway." She tilted her head. "You sure?" "No," I smirked. "But I'm saying it until it becomes true." That made her laugh. And it wasn't pity laughter either. It was real. Like we both knew what it felt like to carry something too heavy, then finally set it down for a minute. We talked for a bit. Just small stuff, work, weather, the plague of rotting fences everywhere, apparently. It felt easy. Like I didn't have to pretend to be okay. And when we said goodbye, she touched my arm. Light? Friendly. "I'm glad you're finding your way," she said. That stuck with me. Because at the time I wasn't sure I was. Later that night, I dug out an old photo album. Not to torture myself, I wasn't in the mood for that. I just wanted to remember the man I used to be. The version of me that smiled without checking the shadows. There was one picture I kept looking at. It was from a cabin trip up north. Just me and Clara back then. We'd caught trout in the morning and read books on the porch all afternoon. In the photo, I'm holding up the fish, proud like a kid, and she's laughing behind me mid-eye roll. It was a good day. It was real. And I don't regret it. Not even now. Because that version of Clara, the one who laughed with me in the cold, who snuck trail mix into my pack when I wasn't looking, she was real too. For a while, at least. That's the hardest part about betrayal. It doesn't erase the good. It just makes you question which parts were true and which parts were performed. I put the photo away. I didn't cry. Didn't punch a wall. I just sat there. Quiet. Still. Grateful for what was. And ready, maybe for the first time, for what could be. I didn't go back right away. The house sat there for weeks, like a monument to what we used to be. Our home. Our mess. Our memories. I had everything I needed in my new place. A borrowed couch. My brother's old microwave. A kettle that screamed when it boiled like it was mad at the water for existing. But one morning I woke up and knew it was time. Time to clean up. Time to walk through it one last time. Time to say goodbye. Clara had already moved out. She left a message through my brother. Said she was staying with her sister in Indiana. Said she didn't want to be there when I came by. "Out of respect," she wrote. That's rich, I thought. But I let it be. No drama. Just keys and distance. I pulled up to the house just after noon. The sun was warm, and the breeze felt like a shoulder pat. It was weirdly quiet. Our old neighbor's kid wasn't playing basketball for once. No dogs barking. Just the sound of leaves rolling across the driveway. I stood at the door for a second. The key still worked. Of course it did. Hadn't been that long. But the lock felt different in my hand. Like it knew I didn't belong anymore. The inside smelled like lemon cleaner and something else. Emptiness has a scent. You'd know it if you've ever walked into a room where the laughter used to live. Most of the furniture was still there. Some of it was mine, well, ours, but now technically hers. I wasn't planning on taking much. Just a few things, my old records, the watch my dad left me, a couple of framed photos that still felt more like me than us. I walked through the living room. She'd moved the couch, swapped the rug. Little things. As if rearranging the space could rearrange the history. The bedroom was bare. Sheets gone. Pillows replaced. But the indent in the mattress was still there, my side. Funny how memory sticks around, even when everything else has changed. I opened the nightstand drawer out of habit. Empty. Except for one thing. A note. Folded neatly. My name on the front. Lucas. I know I said everything I had to say. Maybe too much. Maybe not enough. But I wanted to leave this behind anyway, because some part of me believes you'll come back, if only to say goodbye properly. I don't expect you to forgive me. I still don't fully forgive myself. But I want you to know that I see it now. All of it. You were the one who tried, who stayed, who showed up, even when I didn't deserve it. There's no excuse for what I did. But I hope one day you'll remember the parts of us that were real. I do. Clara. I folded it up and put it back in the drawer. Didn't take it with me. Didn't need to. Let the house keep it. Like a secret between walls and ghosts. In the garage I found my toolbox. That came with me. So did my old leather jacket. The one she always said made me look like trouble in a good way. I hadn't worn it in years. Maybe I will now. Maybe I'll be a little trouble in a good way. Before I left, I walked through the backyard. The grass had grown a little wild. The swing I'd hung from the tree, for the niece we babysat, for the kids we thought we might have one day, it still creaked in the wind. I stood there for a while, not thinking, just being. And then I whispered it. Not out loud. Not to anyone in particular. Just to the air. Thank you. Because as much as that house held pain, it also held pieces of me I didn't want to lose. I learned how to build a fire in that house. How to comfort someone through panic. How to forgive little things. And I learned how to walk away when the big thing shattered everything. I locked the door one last time. Slid the key under the mat. Got in the truck. And drove. Not fast. Not angry. Just forward. There's a strange quiet that comes after you walk away from something that once defined you. It's not peace, not yet. It's more like standing in an empty room and hearing your own breathing for the first time in a while. Noticing the way your shoulders sit a little lower. The way your phone doesn't buzz anymore. And somehow that feels like relief. But there's a bag too. Not the kind with zippers. The kind you carry in your chest. The one that gets packed without you noticing. Here's what I carried. A photo of us at Lake Geneva before the mortgage, before the stress, before the rot. Just two people in love or something close to it. My dad's watch still ticking even if I sometimes forget to wind it. A playlist she made me years ago called Drive Safe, Dummy. Kept it. Still play it sometimes. Not because of her. But because it reminds me of who I was when someone worried if I got home. The scar on my left knuckle from fixing the kitchen sink. Because she said we didn't need a plumber and I believed her. We needed a plumber. And about 7 different versions of what if, folded neatly and stored somewhere between my ribs. Here's what I left behind. The ring. Didn't need it anymore. Didn't want it to mean what it meant. The anniversary wine we'd been saving for some big moment. I hope she opens it one day and realizes the moment passed. The idea that loving someone means losing yourself in them. I did that once. No more. I started going to the gym again. Nothing fancy. Just iron, sweat, and a radio stuck on classic rock. The kind of place where no one cares why you're lifting, just that you're trying. There was this older guy named Harold, must have been in his 60s. Always wore a bandana like he was still chasing Springsteen's glory days. One morning, between sets, he looked at me and said, "You look like a guy who stopped chasing something." I laughed. "You're not wrong." "Good," he said. "Chasing gets old. Standing still, that's where the work is." I didn't know what he meant at the time. Now I do. I got coffee with Dana. She texted me a few days after I left the house, said she'd found some of my records at Clara's and figured I might want them back. I met her at a little cafe by the river. She was already there when I walked in, tapping her cup like she'd been rehearsing what to say. Relax, I said, smiling. I'm not going to ask you to pick a side. She grinned. Good. I've always been terrible at tug-of-war. We talked. And for once, I didn't feel like I was talking around anything. She asked real questions and I gave real answers. No performance. No need to sound brave. When I mentioned the ring, she nodded slowly. You know, she said, just because you let go of something doesn't mean it didn't matter. Yeah, I said. But it also doesn't mean it has to matter forever. That night, I went home and opened the box I'd been avoiding. Not a metaphor, an actual cardboard box. Inside, things I hadn't touched since I moved out. Old birthday cards. Notes she left in my scrubs pocket back when we were still that version of us. A map from a road trip we never took with places circled and jokes scribbled in the margins. I went through each item like an archaeologist trying to understand a lost civilization. And then I lit a fire on my balcony, small, safe, contained. Not to destroy. Not out of anger. But to release. Paper burns fast, but memories take their time. What I've learned. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means redefining. What once was ours becomes was. What once hurt becomes something you carry without flinching. And what once felt like the end, turns out to be a beginning you didn't see coming. There's a shift that happens when you finally stop performing for people. You stop answering questions they're not brave enough to ask. You stop rewriting your story to make it easier for others to swallow. And you stop trying to look like you're fine when some days you're just functioning and that's enough. I hit that shift about 3 months after I left. It wasn't dramatic. No aha moment, no rain pouring on cue. It was a Tuesday. Grocery run. I was walking out of the store with 2 bags of eggs, oatmeal, and way too many bananas when I saw someone I hadn't seen since the fallout. She was a friend of Clara's, one of those people who'd smile at you while filing you into a mental folder labeled probably guilty too. Her eyes widened when she saw me. And I could feel it, that moment where someone wants to ask how you're doing but is really just curious if you've fallen apart yet. She opened her mouth. And I beat her to it. I'm good, I said. Calm. Honest. Really good. Oh, she blinked. That's great, Lucas. I wasn't sure how. I know, I said, setting the bags in my truck. Most people aren't. She smiled politely. Nervous. Tell Clara I wish her well, I added. I got in, drove off, and didn't look back. See, that's the thing people forget about healing, it's not loud. It's not about shouting, or confronting, or turning your grief into a performance. Sometimes it's just walking past someone who expected to see a wreck and showing them a man instead. At work, I was back in rhythm. Even got promoted to lead nurse on nights. The kind of role where people come to you for decisions. I like that. Not because of the authority, but because it reminded me I still had value. Still had instincts. Still had a purpose that didn't vanish the day she walked away from me. One of the new interns, a kid named Andre, asked if I ever got tired of working nights. I shrugged. You get used to it. And honestly, it teaches you a lot. Like what? Like how to be okay in the dark. He didn't get it. Not fully. But that's all right. Some lessons you only learn when life guts you and dares you to stand back up. I started taking photos again. Nothing fancy. Just a second-hand Nikon I found at a pawn shop. I'd forgotten how much I loved framing the world through a lens, how a broken-down barn could look majestic in the right light. How shadows didn't always mean sadness. Sometimes they just meant depth. On Sundays, I'd drive to random spots, old highways, rusty bridges, rivers that didn't care what they passed by. I'd snap pictures. Breathe. Watch the sunset like it owed me nothing. It was the most peace I'd felt in years. I still thought about Clara sometimes. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. Not in a yearning way. More like checking an old scar just to see if it still ached. It didn't. Not anymore. I hoped she was doing better. I didn't wish her pain. I didn't wish her much of anything, really. Indifference. That's the real finish line. One evening Dana texted me. I'm heading to that art fair this Saturday. Want to tag along? They've got live music and I could use someone to help me judge overpriced candles. I smiled. Sounds like a mission I'm qualified for. We met at the fair. It wasn't a date. Not officially. But when she laughed at the smell of a candle called Forest Regret and said, "Who buys this stuff?" I felt something shift again. Not a spark. Not yet. But maybe the soft click of a door unlocking. One I hadn't opened in a long time. We walked past a booth selling old typewriters and worn-out books. Dana picked up a dog-eared copy of The Old Man and the Sea and handed it to me. You ever read it? High school, I said. I remember thinking the guy was nuts. She laughed. He wasn't nuts. He was just done proving things. I held the book, felt the weight of it. Maybe that's where I was now. No longer the man trying to prove he could be a perfect husband. No longer trying to prove he was enough. No longer trying to prove he deserved better. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. Because I already knew who I was. And I liked him. The first time I really slept, deeply slept, I didn't even notice it until the morning after. No tossing. Number 3 a.m. ceiling stairs. No dreams where Clara was still mine and the bed still held warmth that meant something. Just sleep. Quiet, whole, unbothered. I woke up around 6 a.m., sunlight spilling through my half-drawn blinds, and realized my jaw wasn't clenched. My fists weren't curled. My chest wasn't tight. I was just there. And it felt like a win. I didn't tell anyone. There's no parade for something like that. But I carried it with me that day like a medal no one could see. It's funny how healing doesn't come all at once. It's not a switch, it's a series of gentle confirmations. You laugh without guilt. You eat a full meal and actually taste it. You walk past a memory and it doesn't knock the wind out of you. And eventually, you sleep. Work was quiet that week. A few sprained ankles. A guy with a lawnmower mishap who refused to admit he'd had a couple beers beforehand. We all knew. He smelled like summer and bad choices. In the break room, Andre, the intern I'd started mentoring, asked if I ever missed being married. I thought about it. No, I said honestly. But I miss belonging somewhere. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. It gets lonely sometimes, I added, but not like it used to. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely. Took me a while to figure that out. Now, when I came home to silence, it didn't echo. It embraced. Saturday morning, I made pancakes. From scratch, not the box kind. My dad's old recipe, the one he used when I was a kid, always said the secret was leaving the batter a little lumpy and using too much butter. I ate at the small table in my kitchen, windows open, sun crawling across the floor. No music. Just birds. Distant cars. The occasional bark from next door. I wasn't filling the silence anymore. I was enjoying it. Dana texted me again. You free this evening? I've got 2 tickets to that jazz trio at the greenhouse. Thought of you. I stared at the message for a second. Not because I didn't want to go, I did. But because this felt different. Not a distraction. Not a rebound. Just something honest. Yeah, I replied. Count me in. She picked me up. Said she liked driving sometimes. Said it helped her think. I asked what she thought about on drives. She grinned. Mostly whether I have enough gas to avoid talking to myself for too long. The jazz trio was incredible. Soft, slow melodies. Candlelight flickering on old glass walls. And somewhere between the second and third song, I realized I hadn't checked the exits. Hadn't calculated the fastest way out. Hadn't felt like I was out of place. I was just there. Next to someone who didn't need to fix me. Just see me. And I let her. After the show, we walked through the greenhouse garden. Flowers curled up for the night, like tiny sentries guarding peace. She stopped and looked at me. You seem lighter, she said. I slept, I told her. First real sleep in a long time. Dana smiled. Not the kind you give out of politeness. The kind that says I see you. Good, she whispered. You deserve that. I didn't invite her up when she dropped me off. Not because I didn't want her to come inside, but because I wanted to give the night a clean edge. Something I hadn't had in a long time, rest without pressure. She understood. Squeezed my hand before I got out. Text me when you wake up, she said. I might sleep in, I smiled. I hope you do. That night, I crawled into bed. Sheets clean. Air cool. Heart calm. No regrets. No questions. And for the second time in this story, I slept. There was a time when moving on felt like letting go of something sacred. Like progress meant betrayal. Like healing meant pretending it never hurt. Like every step away from the pain was a step toward forgetting. But lately, forward felt lighter. Like it belonged to me again. One morning I was doing laundry because nothing says life after heartbreak like sorting socks in silence, and I realized something. It had been weeks since I'd thought about why it happened. Not that I didn't still remember. I did. I always would. But the urge to analyze it, dissect it, relive it, that was gone. I didn't care why Clara cheated anymore. I didn't need to know what she felt when I played that video on the kitchen TV. I only cared that I walked out that door and never looked back in regret. That was the win. That was the closure. I got lunch with my brother that weekend. We sat on the patio of some barbecue joint he liked. He kept trying to convince me to date the bartender. She's got a tattoo of a shark on her forearm, bro. She's seen some stuff. I laughed. I'm not really in the market for people who've seen some stuff right now. He shrugged. Hey, just glad to see you laughing again. That part hit me. Because I hadn't even noticed it. But yeah, I laughed more these days. Big, stupid, head-thrown-back laughter. The kind of laugh you forget how to make when your home becomes a crime scene of the heart. Dana and I started seeing more of each other. Still casual. Still slow. Like two people carrying boxes into the same room but not unpacking just yet. She never pressed. Never asked for timelines or definitions. We had coffee. Walks. A few dinners. And one night, we sat in my apartment listening to an old Sam Cooke record I dug out from the bottom of my moving boxes. She rested her head on my shoulder and said, "You ever feel like you've lived a whole life in the last 6 months?" "Yeah," I said. "And for once, I don't want to go back and change any of it." She nodded. "Good. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't need to. We just were." People always talk about starting over like it means wiping the slate clean. But that's not real. The slate doesn't clean. It fills with layers. Memories. Mistakes. Moments you thought would break you but ended up making you. Starting over just means starting different. And I had finally done that. One night, I passed by the old house. Just driving. Not looking for ghosts. Not chasing answers. Just a road I used to take. Familiar. Quiet. The porch light was off. The window where I used to watch Clara dance while she cleaned was closed. But this time, no ache. No lump in my throat. Just a quiet nod to the man I used to be. And a full, steady breath from the man I'd become. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. I just kept driving. Forward. Finally. I wrote it in the middle of a rainy afternoon. No lightning. No thunder. Just the steady rhythm of water on the windows like the sky was giving me space to think. A kind of soft permission to say what I hadn't all this time. Not for her. For me. The note was simple. Clean. No scratches or crossouts. Just the truth spoken plain the way I wish it had always been. Clara. I don't hate you. You might think I should. That after what you did, after the way I found out, my chest should still burn every time I hear your name. But it doesn't. Not anymore. I loved you. You were my choice. Every day, even on the hard ones. And for a while, you chose me too. I believe that now. I don't think it was all a lie. But something shifted. Maybe in you. Maybe in us. Maybe in both. And instead of talking about it, instead of facing it together, you made a choice that shattered everything. I've run the scenes 1,000 different ways in my head. What if I worked less? What if we had the kid we talked about? What if I had noticed sooner? But here's the truth I've come to. Even if I'd done everything perfectly, I still wouldn't have been enough for the version of you that betrayed me. And that's not about me. That's about you. I'm not writing this for closure. I found mine the day I walked out and didn't look back. I'm not writing to rekindle anything. That fire burned out the moment you chose someone else in the bed we once called ours. I'm writing this to let you go. Completely. Not with bitterness. Not with grief. Just peace. I hope you find what you're looking for, whatever it is. And I hope that one day when the silence around you gets loud enough, you'll remember the man who gave you everything he had, even when he had nothing left to prove. Goodbye, Clara. Lucas. I folded the letter. No envelope. No address. Just tucked it into a drawer I never opened anymore. It didn't matter if she read it. She didn't need to. I needed to. Because some things aren't written to reach another person. They're written to release yourself. That night I made dinner, real dinner. Steak, roasted potatoes, the whole deal. Played Sam Cooke again. Sat on the balcony with a glass of wine and watched the clouds roll off into whatever part of the sky carries them away for good. I didn't check my phone. Didn't refresh old photos. Didn't wonder what she was doing now. I just breathed. Fully. Freely. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't look like something to survive. It looked like something I might actually enjoy. And when Dana called just to say she'd heard a song that reminded her of me, not us, not the past, just me, I smiled. Because for once, I wasn't the man someone almost loved. I was a man finally learning to love himself.